the Haas with FranNet, and my partner Merri.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
And we're here to talk with you today about franchising. And specifically, our topic is about the types of industries that are available for franchise ownership. Now, I know that, Merri, you've probably run into a lot of people who think that franchising is all about fast food, right?
Kyle, I've had some calls in the last week, people I've talked to who've said, wow, I've never even considered franchise ownership just because it's all fast food and I don't know anything about that. I have no experience and it costs a ton of money. So they tend to discount franchising on the whole. And what they don't realize is there's so much more out there.
So that's funny. How do you respond to something like that? And I know that, when you and I first met, I admit I had the same head trash to unpack about franchising and being all about fast food. And I learned a lot from you during that experience in the very beginning. So what do you tell them when they come to get to the table with that idea?
Well, most people don't realize that there are about 3,000 franchises out there in over 90 industries, and there's so much more than food. There are retail options, there are automotive options, there are business to business options, and home and personal services. And some of the things that we see around our communities, we don't even realize are franchises, especially from a business to business perspective. So there's a
Huh.
lot of different things that fit a lot of different skill sets.
What's an example of that? Like something that is a franchise you wouldn't think is one.
Oh gosh, here in Austin, we have a lot of computer industry, we have a lot of software industry. So we get requests for IT businesses. But a lot of people don't know that those types of things are even out there, that they could even go out and serve their community by owning a business like that.
Yeah, yeah. The B2B, I think, is a really great example of one of those industries where franchising can be really powerful as a means for growth. But it doesn't seem like it would be a franchise. It doesn't look like a fast food business. And I think if I'm hearing you correctly, that's kind of the point we're getting here to is that franchising is less about, you know, um, restaurants on corners and more about having a set of systems and processes and a brand, training and support to help you get to your goal successfully. And it could take a whole lot of different forms.
That's absolutely right. I mean, that's why you really want to find a business where you can maximize your skill set and still achieve the goals that you're going to have for it. And you can do that by knowing, to your point, Kyle, that those franchises have systems, have processes, have training to help you fill those voids, things maybe skill sets you don't have by hiring those things done or knowing the franchisor is going to help you with them. So there's a lot of opportunity out there too in terms of growing in multi units with certain types of businesses, maybe more with retail, automotive, food for sure. But then there are also opportunities for dipping into very large territories to grow a business. Things maybe that are more business to business or even home and personal services. I know you can probably relate to that, Kyle. I know you've had past clients getting into some of those home and personal services. What have you heard from them over the past few years?
So many stories. Keep it succinct, but I've got two stories to address two things that you brought up. One was I had a client recently who came to me with the whole food idea, like, "Hey, I know food. I know that's in franchising. I want to check that out." So I obliged. I mean, we don't work with that many food concepts, actually, only a couple of them, but um, I also, we built the model, we understood that person, and we found a suite of businesses that were really well suited. And what he discovered after just the first call with each one of those businesses is that the ones that had that really strong support, training, systematized ways of building and growing the business were far more attractive than just, coming in with food. And I'm not dissing food as an industry per se, but what he found was that really why he wanted to get into franchising was to have that support and structure and to be able to grow. Um, and getting to the growth idea that you had mentioned, I work with people all the time. We like to back into sort of a means of growth by asking, well, what's the long game for this for you? Where do you want to be? What's your lifestyle look like, 10, 20 years from now? How much money do you want to make? And you can back into a growth model, based on the answers to those questions. If I have somebody that comes to me and says, gee, I'd love to make a $500,000 in cash flow a year in my pocket. Well, you can do the math and figure out, well, how many units of a given business do you need to make to accomplish that objective, and how long is it going to take, and how much do you need to invest? So it starts to get real once you start asking the big existential questions about, why are you in business to begin with?
Absolutely. And I find too that I had this discussion this morning with one of my clients. They were thinking about how do we grow big, and in certain concepts, they'll do that by having multiple territories, multiple units. Others may have opportunity for building on a certain customer base. So a lot of us own homes. A lot of us have to have those
Mm-hmm.
homes cleaned, maintained. We may have pools that need to be maintained, yards that need to be maintained. And so there's opportunity for serving one client with multiple businesses over time.
Yes.
And so that could be a means for growth. The other thing that's really interesting too is some people have this idea of diversification. So a while back, I had this really interesting gentleman. He had thought very hard about what this was going to be for him. And not everyone comes to the table with this idea. But he basically said, I own a small software company. So now I want to diversify by owning a residential service business. I want to own a business to consumer retail business and eventually a manufacturing business. So his ideal was basically to cover lots of different categories. So he had a lot of things working for him in different ways. And so for some people, this is about that first step, that first business that leads
Mm-hmm.
them into the next business. The businesses tend to be the vehicles for people getting to their overall goals. And
Yeah.
so, whether, maybe some of you out there thinking, how do I diversify or how do I grow a business? There may be multiple ways of getting that done.
Yeah, absolutely. I think back to another story about one of my clients many 11 years ago, I think. Got into a business, and he grew it over time. And I guess 8 or 9 years later, he and his wife called back. We sat down at a meeting again to get into a second business. And part of the impetus for that was that she was jealous of him and all of his free time. And she wanted to have a business that also gave her free time so she could leave her job. And so they were, sort of thinking again about what those long term goals were, seeing over time that he had achieved them, at least for himself, and that now she can get on board. And what they did actually was diversify a little bit, like you were talking about. They had an existing client base. They found a complementary business that was also semi-absentee, so they could both have more time, but they could cross market those businesses to each other and located them in close proximity. So it'd be easy. And so that's a really great way to strategize. Like, well, when you're contemplating owning your business, is you're standing at a crossroads where you can design a life that you want. And if you dare to dream, you can achieve it through business ownership. And that's just what they did. Um, so I'm happy to be able to report that they are both running those semi-absentee businesses and doing well.
I think you just aged us both, Kyle, but I would, knowing that we both had clients that have worked with us multiple times to get into multiple businesses, I like to think that it's more that we have lots of experience with this.
Well, as I recall, we both started this when we were teenagers, right?
Right.
Remember that?
Yes, way
Yes.
back then. But yeah, that's one of the cool things about what we get to do every day too, is watching people meeting their goals and getting into to what's next. And
Absolutely.
one of the things I think people discount early on in their search, especially when they're looking at things that are more B2B service or home and personal service, is the scalability of a business like that, where they can own one large territory, continue to dip into that territory to grow it by adding customers, continue to grow that business by scaling with perhaps more trucks, more employees, more equipment, without ever having to repeat bricks and mortar like you would with automotive or retail or food. And I
Yeah.
think that some of the things to weigh out in that are, whether or not you as a person are going to be the one who is running that business from day one and moving it to semi-absenteeism, like you had mentioned before. And semi-absentee is a relative term. I just want to put that out there. For people that have 5 to 20 hours a week, it is possible that you could run your business semi-absentee even from the start with the management. Different franchisors would be able to address that with their models. But what that means is you, as the owner, are working on the overall growth of the business, the finances, the HR, the marketing, right? And you have other people who are actually managing the day to day and managing the people who are actually performing the function of what the business is. And for some people, it does make sense to do multiple units in retail, food, automotive, perhaps because they can manage that manager from the beginning. So, understanding what you're looking for in terms of time management may go back to whether or not you want to keep your job or you want to jump out of your job and start the business and just get it up and running. So, there are
Yeah.
many, many ways to move that growth forward.
I think that, a key component to this for anybody who's contemplating, working with people like us to get into business is to begin with the end in mind. Um, to envision what you want your life to be like as a business owner and work backward from there. So I encourage, like I've had several clients who are recently that are, either they already own businesses or they have a job and they want to run something semi-absentee, which, to your point, businesses are wonderful to look at. Just don't turn your back on them. I don't think there's any truly 100% passive businesses. They all require at least a little
Like
bit of
the
effort.
ocean, you never want to turn your back on it.
Yeah, you just don't turn your back on it. You'll get hit by a wave you weren't expecting. Um, so, but these folks are folks that have some flexibility in their careers to be able to devote some time to a business. And for some of them, it's about getting out of the business that they're in currently and transitioning to another form of income. For others, it's a retirement plan where they've got a really nice career path with a job they already have and they want to keep that, but they want to use that financial benefit they get from that job to feed another income stream that they can step into so that they've got a nice, 8 to 10 year horizon on their career and then they can move on to business ownership. And so that kind of strategic thinking, beginning with the end in mind, it really does inform on the front end. Well, how do you want to grow to get there? And how many units is it going to take to get there? And do you want to, secure those territories ahead of time so you have room to grow over time without worrying about getting landlocked, or anything like that? So, big picture thinking, I think, is really helpful in this process.
For sure.
Well, I think we're almost at the end of our time. We wanted to do about 15 minutes today, right? Is there anything? I know we've, you know, kind of dug deep a little bit on growth and different types of industries. Is there anything you think that we ought to end with? Any thoughts on your end?
Well, I'll just share this. Kyle and I have a lot of stories. We have a lot of anecdotal information as well as great information coming from franchisors. If y'all would like to learn more, feel free to check us out. You can reach us at frannet.com, FRANNET.com. Thank
Yeah.
you all so much for joining us.
So what I'm going to do is we're going to take this video. It's going to be posted in my LinkedIn feeds. Thank you for everybody that's been watching. You can contact me directly on LinkedIn. I'm also going to share that with Merri so that she can post that on her feed. Hit us up on LinkedIn or go to frannet.com if you'd like to learn a little bit more about what it takes to own a franchise business. Until then, Merri, it's always a pleasure to see you. And we'll do it again soon.
All right.
All right. Take care, everyone.